Hello, I'm Brigantia, Blackbird of Blackbird's Brew. Happy Thursday. Time for more Samhain stuff. Today we're going to be focusing in on the idea of honoring the ancestors. Honoring our ancestors is not only an extremely important component of celebrating Samhain, but in many respects when we think about practicing paganism, that is a huge chunk of what pagan religiosity is really all about. If you aren't going back to your ancestors, if you aren't going back to the meaning that they found in the world around them, then what you doing and why are you calling it paganism? But let's think about what it means to honor the ancestors, because these are words that get tossed around, and like so many other words that get tossed around, I don't think that we're really considering what it means when you put that into practice. What is it to honor the ancestors? Now, before we can get into that, we have to get real for just a moment or two. We have to acknowledge that there is a loud, very loud movement in modern society that encourages people to all but spit on their ancestors. And by this I mean, and I don't have to mention anything by name, you know exactly who I'm talking about right now. I am talking about every voice out there that is saying that either your ancestors were responsible for all the evils that ever existed in the world and no one else did anything ever, or they are saying that your ancestors were victims and they couldn't help but be victims because of these horrible bad people over here. And it's just the way it will always be. No one can ever change. You will always be doomed. I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say that anyone who's promoting that kind of ideology, and it really doesn't matter what ethnic group is being blamed as, here is your devil and here are your victims. It doesn't matter what it is. It's all just circumstantial. It's all just politics. But anyone who is preaching that base idea doesn't have your best interest at heart. Not in the context of practicing paganism, but just not in the context of human beings in general. This is not someone who has goodwill. This is someone who's trying to, antagonize people. It's trying to make people feel guilty, and it's trying to keep people down. It's about creating inferiority complexes. And people who constantly feel inferior, or that they should be guilty about something, or that there's something about themselves that they can't help that makes them lesser, less human, or less worthy, or just less. That is someone whose end goal is to control people. And giving in to their ideology is allowing yourself to become their pawn. So let's look at people who promote that kind of idea for what they are. Just saying. Now, as far as it goes, if you are being persuaded that everything your ancestors did was bad, or everything that your ancestors did resulted in you being in a weakened position in society, you can't. I mean, you just literally can't honor people who you despise. Whether you are despising them for not successfully beating back oppressors, or you are despising them because you think that they were oppressors and everything they ever did was evil. You can't honor your ancestors if that's what you honestly believe that they were. So this is a good time to examine our attitudes about the cultures that we descended from, us personally as individuals. And this is about, not only how we view our pagan or our pre-Christian ancestors, but also how we view non-pagan ancestors, whether it is people who were of the Christian persuasion or whatever else that it was. Let's look at how we view them. What are our assumptions? What are our prejudices about them? If we have a problem in this area, then this is something that can't be confronted too soon, particularly if we are walking a pagan path and it's important for us to do this. So, we cannot practice this if we hate our own roots. Now, actions also speak louder than words, and this goes into another issue with honoring the ancestors. Let's say that you have a balanced view about your ancestors. You realize that they were just people like us They did good things, they did bad things, same as us. But let's say that you haven't exactly put anything into practice. I mean, and don't feel too bad. The reality is we live in a very lazy, very passive, very digital society. So it makes it easy to be passive. It makes it easy to talk a good game, but not actually do all that much. But empty words, and by that I mean words that aren't backed up with actions, empty words mean nothing. Going through the ocean, through the motions when our hearts are empty, means nothing. Pretending, at least good enough to convince other people, means nothing. Sorry about that. Struggling a little bit. We'll get through this. But when I say that these things mean nothing, what I mean is that there is nothing to be gained spiritually by just saying words that we don't mean, or performing rituals that our hearts aren't into, or, persuading other people that we're just the bee's knees and aren't we good pagans, but not actually doing anything or not reaching our hearts. These are acts of futility. These are acts of vanity. Sincerity is something that is required of us. This isn't an optional thing. If we are going to successfully practice our religion, we have to be sincere about it. Otherwise, it's just a waste of time. It doesn't mean anything. We're not fooling anyone. We're certainly not fooling our gods, and we're not fooling any of our ancestors who might be looking in on us from time to time. If we're going to take practical actions and really honor our forebears, it's going to have to spring from a sincere heart, and a heart that is warm, a heart that realizes that most people through history, even if they did things that, we find abhorrent today, these are people who were doing the best they could in the context of the times in which they lived, in accordance to what was customary, to what their beliefs were, to what they knew of the world. Soft eyes. Soft eyes. That's what we need here. Now let's talk about two different kinds of ancestors. First, these are ancestors that we have by genetics, and later we'll talk about spiritual ancestors. Now, especially in the United States, there's no telling where our ancestors came from. A lot of people are what we call Heinz 57s, got a little bit of everything built up in your genetic code. But whether our ancestors hailed from just one corner of the world or they came from absolutely everywhere on Earth, it required all of those ancestors to create you. Every single one of them, even the ones whom you might not have liked if you had known them. Everyone had to participate, everyone had to survive, everyone had to continue the family line in order for you to be born. For that fact alone, they're deserving of honor, respect, and consideration. Life is a gift. It's a wonderful gift that we have to be alive and to experience things. A little gratitude goes a long way. Now, it isn't necessary to agree with everything that our ancestors ever did or what they were imagined to have done. And it's not as if we have the full facts on any of their deeds. I mean, we don't. Let's just be honest. And let's also be honest with the fact that we're not perfect either. We might consider how we'd like future generations to look at us when we become their ancestors. Would we want them to take a very harsh view on us, or to piece through what information about us survives, if anything, and have them decide, well, they believed X, Y, and Z, and I believe C, D, and F, therefore I can't like this ancestor. Do we want them to be doing that, or would we prefer for them simply to accept that we were an imperfect human being who was doing the best they knew how? Something to think about. And whatever standard that we would like others to apply to us, maybe that's the standard we should apply to other people. Now, it also isn't necessary to have similar spiritual convictions to your ancestors, and nor do what you believe their politics to have been at the time, they don't have to fall in line with yours. I mean, these things we've been sold a false bill of goods on this matter. You do not have to agree and be the same in order to have respect for someone else, or in order for that person to have had value and virtues. Keep in mind, we are all a mixture of virtues and vices ourselves. Something to think about. So, now that we have that bit out of the way, what can we actually do? One thing to do with honoring our ancestors who come from our family lines, if we have special heirlooms, particularly if it was a relative that we were especially close to and had a really good relationship with, displaying them in a prominent place in the home, especially during Samhain, is one way to show them respect, to say, you're here and you're still, your spirit is still welcome within the family and within my home. That's an important thing. Of course, incorporating them into a dumb supper, literally inviting them to come and dine with you, setting out a place for them. That's certainly an act of honor. Or also inviting them to join with you in your Samhain ritual, assuming that they haven't already gone through the process of reincarnation. But if they're still on the other side, you can't make them come, but you can certainly invite them, and that is a sign of respect. Now, when it comes to these, little heirlooms, little objects that we inherited from them, these aren't just objects. These are things that are infused with energy, and that energy helps form a stronger connection between us and the ancestor in question. It's a symbol of love, and that elevates it from just, the material components that the object is consisted of. Let's say it's a lamp that Aunt Dorothy left you in her will. But every time you look at that lamp, you remember the fun times you had with Aunt Dorothy. You think back to holidays you shared with her, conversations that you had. All the good things about your relationship is something you think of every time you look at that lamp. Well, that lamp is infused with all of that good energy, and it's a point of connection you can use when, you at least want to say hello to Aunt Dorothy and let her know that, she still matters to you. Samhain there's a lot of love in it. And reminding people who have passed that we do still have that love for them, that's important. It isn't just grieving their physical loss. It's about being glad that their spirit endures. Another thing we can do to honor our ancestors is to perform an act of service in that person's memory, and to be very practical about it. Think about what was important to this particular ancestor while they were alive. Assuming but I'm thinking more so in the context of relatives that you've lost, people you actually interacted with. Now, this act of service could be something ongoing, such as volunteering in a charity, or it could be something that's very simple and very day-to-day, such as behaving in a manner in which your ancestor would have been proud of. I think that sort of thing means more than what perhaps we think it does. Another thing to honor them is passing on legacies. And this involves passing things down to the next generation of family members, whether it be holiday traditions, secret family recipes, sharing family stories, or just passing down worthwhile values and virtues. And this would be another case where our actions and words really need to be in alignment. Kids will spot a hypocrite faster than anybody else on earth. So if, whether it's your own children or grandchildren or nieces and nephews, the children of cousins, whoever it is, if we are teaching them about something that we think is a value in life, or something that constitutes virtuous behavior, we need to be sure that we are practicing what they preach, because they are far more likely to follow our examples rather than our words. So that's just a few things when it comes to our physical genetic ancestors. Now, when it comes to spiritual ancestors, this is a biggie, because we are living in a day and age that has make it up as you go along pseudo-paganism. And there's a distinct lack of respect given to our spiritual forebearers amongst people who take this approach. What happens is that you will find that there are people who adopt a label without knowing what that label consists of, and they will actively deny that they have any responsibility to give consideration to those who founded the faith or strongly influenced the faith, and what they might have had to say about what it actually consists of. Because apparently, the notions that pop into the heads of the spiritually uneducated are supposed to be more important and relevant than the ideas and convictions of people who practiced for decades. More important than those who successfully resurrected paganism into the modern world, as well as just the general heritage of thousands of years of spiritual evolution. Because, sure, that idea makes sense. Could it be that perhaps our modern desire to constantly reinvent the wheel is rooted in a lack of humility, and that maybe regaining and relearning that humility is an act of respect in and of itself? Now, I'm not saying that we have to believe the exact same way or practice the exact same way as what our spiritual ancestors did, but I think it's proper not to just dismiss out of hand the ideas of people who preceded us. At the very least, if we have information such as older books, listen to their line of reasoning. Take what they have to say into consideration. Why did they say what they said? Could it be that maybe they had figured out something about life that we haven't yet? Maybe. And on the occasions when we do find ourselves very much going our own way, at least be able to rationally justify it. And keep in mind that our fellow pagans, they're not obligated to treat our personal ideas as if it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, especially if we can't explain how we arrived at our conclusions. So it's important to have some humility, to have some respect, to consider that perhaps people are able to make connections that perhaps we can't make yet, or that people who are more mature in the faith have been able to peel back some layers that perhaps we haven't yet. So one way to show respect for our spiritual ancestors, whether on the other side of the veil or who are still with us, is just to listen to what they have to say and carefully consider why they're saying it. Simply doing that, that shows so much. That shows honor, that shows consideration, and it's showing people something more than what they generally get in a lot of online pagan circles. So that's one thing. Another is to read older pagan books and reflect on their meaning. It doesn't mean that every idea within those books is going to be quite right, but I guarantee you these are people who had to have very solid foundations in their faith, especially when you think about the generation in the 50s and 60s and 70s who were really the pioneers, who've said, yes, we are pagan, yes, we are looking to the past for inspiration, yes, we are resurrecting these traditions, yes, we are forging this path, and yes, we have every right to believe and to practice our religion. They faced things that we, quite frankly, are not facing in the here and now. That took courage. It took some nerve. People used to lose jobs over this sort of thing. People used to lose custody over their kids. They used to be ostracized by other people in the community. The atmosphere is nowhere near that hostile. I mean, even if we are catching some attitude from someone, I guarantee it is not on the levels on what anyone out of, the generation of Gerald Gardner and his group of Wiccans and other people who were bringing paganism into the forefront in the 1950s. It is not on the same level as what they experienced. Maybe we should show a little respect for their courage and for the sacrifices that they made by giving what they wrote down real consideration and treating that information with respect. A third thing that we can do to honor our spiritual ancestors is to meditate and ask for guidance from those who've passed beyond the veil. Be open-minded, take their advice. So often when we're doing pathworking meditations, we might be looking to our gods, we might be looking to animal spirit guides, we might be looking to, our own, fleshly ancestors. But how often do we, do a pathworking meditation and say, I just need to talk to another witch. I just need to talk to someone who walked the priestly path, and I just need some advice. How often do we really do that? Maybe that could be something that we do this Samhain. At any rate, I think we could all stand to take the idea of honoring the ancestors a little more seriously and to think about what it actually means when this is more than just something that we say, more than an idea that just gets tossed out in videos right before Samhain and then doesn't really get mentioned ever again. So, lots of food for thought. I would be interested in hearing what you have to say about it. If you'd like to join the conversation, please click on the link on the description box below. That will let you join Blackbird's Brew on Discord. And of course, if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel, like, and leave me a comment. I'd be happy to talk to you. But that's it for now. I will see you in another video. Bye.